I'd like to present a sutta. This teaching is from the Saṁyutta Nikāya, chapter 15. It's a series actually of teachings. I'll read one of the suttas and mention the others as they relate to this sutta. This is a teaching about the beginningless and endless nature of samsara, the beginningless and endless nature of that which exists, that which is contained within this universe, or perhaps there are many universes, who knows? All that is, all that we know, all that we can perceive through the sense doors, everything in our experience basically has the quality of, when we try and trace it back, go back into the past to see the causes of our experience in the present, there is no limit to how far we can go back. And equally, when we project forward into the future, there is no end to those possibilities. And this is something we can consider in many different ways. But first, I'd like to read the sutta to you, and I invite you all to take in the sutta very fully. So in order to do this, we can close the eyes and come into the body and just allow the attention to rest and settle into the space that we've just entered. So whatever has been happening leading up to this point, we can allow ourselves to put it aside and really enter this moment. It's very good to receive the Buddha's teachings with an attitude of gratitude and an attitude of respect, and therefore not to have anything else being given precedence. This is the Dhamma from the Lord Buddha. Let's receive fully and enable ourselves to benefit fully, therefore, from these teachings. So I'm going to pause for a moment to settle, to arrive, to enter the space. As I mentioned, this sutta comes from Saṁyutta Nikāya, the connected discourses or shorter discourses of the Buddha. Huge collection, as many of you all know, of amazing teachings on every topic of Dhamma. Chapter 15 is about causation. This sutta, number 2, 15.2, is called the Earth, Pathavī Sutta. At Savatthi, and the Buddha speaking, he says, mendicants, transmigration has no known beginning. No first point is found of sentient beings roaming and transmigrating, shrouded by ignorance and fettered by craving. So just in case for any of you this word is not so familiar, this transmigration means really in this context birth and rebirth, birth and death, rebirth and death, the constant coming and going from one form to another, life after life. So to say again, the Buddha said no first point is to be found of sentient beings roaming and transmigrating, shrouded by ignorance and fettered by craving. So we're blinded by ignorance. We're not seeing things clearly. This is why this endless roaming and searching is happening. And the other cause, which is an offspring, an offshoot of ignorance, is that we're fettered by craving. We're bound up, caught up, trapped by craving in this endless cycle of birth, death, rebirth. The Buddha goes on and gives us a simile here. He says, suppose a person was to make the whole earth into clay balls the size of jojoba seeds, little clay balls. They'd lay them down, saying, this is my father, this is my grandfather, this is my mother, this is my grandmother, etc. The whole earth would run out before that person's fathers and grandfathers were counted. Mothers and grandmothers were counted. So that's quite an image. This entire planet divided up into little tiny balls, and each one representing a parent, a grandparent, perhaps a child, a grandchild, and so forth. We would run out of clay balls before we had counted all of those parents, grandparents. Imagine. It's actually quite hard to really conceive of this. How many little balls would there be? That in itself is countless, isn't it? And even so, we would use them all up before we've counted all those that we've been related to, life after life after life. And the Buddha goes on to say, why is that? Why would we experience this? Because transmigration, birth and rebirth, has no beginning that we can know. No first point is found of sentient beings roaming and transmigrating, shrouded by ignorance and fettered by craving. For such a long time, says the Buddha, for such a long time you have undergone suffering, agony, and disaster, swelling the cemeteries. For so long we have been experiencing, friends, suffering, agony, and disaster, swelling the cemeteries. He says, this is quite enough for you, for us, to become disillusioned, dispassionate, and freed regarding all conditions. If we can recognize, if we can realize the truth of this teaching, we would surely have no wish to continue this endless cycle of suffering. And friends, even if we don't have the special powers, the higher knowledges, whereby we could recognize all these past lives that we've already experienced, the Buddha had this kind of vision, this kind of seeing, this kind of knowledge. One of the Te Vidya, the three higher knowledges, he could see not only his own trajectory, all the past lives, countless, beginningless, that had led him to the point when he became a Buddha. He could also see all other beings having the same endless, beginningless cycle of suffering. And of course, the third special power or higher knowledge is that of liberation, of seeing the cause of suffering and letting go of the cause of suffering. So we may not have these attainments, we may not have these higher knowledges, but we do have the Buddhist teachings. And this teaching is really telling us, giving us a sense, enabling us to perhaps consider the endless nature of samsara. And if we can only recognize the weariness that it entails, then we may have a sense of wishing to turn away from desire, turn away from suffering, reveal the truth, let go of ignorance, come to rest, and throw off this endless compulsion to keep coming back for more. He said, this is quite enough. Recognizing the truth of this teaching, that samsara has no beginning and no end, this realm of suffering, this desire realm. If we could just consider this, this is quite enough to become disillusioned, dispassionate, and freed regarding all conditions. Disillusioned, nibbidā. Another meaning of this word nibbidā is weariness, turning away from. Disillusioned is a really good translation of nibbidā, to become disillusioned, no longer enamored, no longer enticed or intoxicated with samsara. We develop this world weariness, this dispassion arises then. Virāga, this loss of the heat, this cooling down, this seeing through passion and letting it go. And that leads on to freedom, vimutti, to letting go of all the conditions that will lead to further suffering in samsara. So what a profound teaching, friends. And I'd like to point to the fact that this sutta is actually in a group with some other suttas which are on exactly the same teaching around the recognition of the impossibility of coming to an end within samsara, the impossibility of knowing a beginning to the suffering in samsara. The Buddha also compares this to, imagine the entire planet is turned into twigs and sticks and pieces of wood, and you pile them up, and each time you add a piece of wood, a twig, or a stick to the pile, you consider, this was a father I had, this was a mother I had, this was another mother, another father. You'll never get to the end of your list of mothers and fathers. You'll run out of twigs and sticks more quickly than you can meet the end of all those who have given birth to us, all those who have been a parent for us. Buddha gives another simile in one of these suttas of tears, the oceans of tears. He says, consider the 4 great oceans and all the water within them, all the salt water. And he says, you have cried more tears. All the tears that you have cried would fill these 4 oceans and beyond. All the tears that have been wept for those that we've lost, the dear ones that we've lost. The size of a tear, a little tiny drop of salt water, saline, and then all the brine, all the saline water in the 4 great oceans. And the number of these tiny tears that we've shed over time would fill and overflow the 4 great oceans. Just to take that in, just to consider that. A sense of endless time, no limit. We know through science that this universe was created at some point millions and millions of years ago, but it actually has a beginning. We also know that this universe has an end. It's very, 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 very far in the future. But as the universe expands, at some point it stops expanding, and then the universe collapses back in on itself. And in the end, we return to what's termed the Big Bang, isn't it? The collapsing in to one point of the entire universe. So we might have ideas and thoughts about, actually, there is a way of coming to the beginning. The beginning was the Big Bang. and the end will be this collapsing in of the universe that science tells us is actually something we can understand, we can calculate, and we can perceive through our incredible intellects and scientific abilities, instruments, and goodness knows what. This has been discovered. In the Hindu mythology, we have the story of Brahma, the great god, the creator god. And in the Vedas, we learn about Brahma lying down and sleeping. And we're told that his every in-breath is the creation of a universe. A universe comes into being with the in-breath of Brahma. And then as Brahma breathes out, the universe comes to an end. So this entire story of the Big Bang leading to our universe expanding infinitely, but there is a limit. There's a point where the expansion stops, and then the universe collapses back into one point. Everything ends. One breath of Brahma. In the Hindu mythology, this is really interesting, that there was an understanding perhaps of the nature of the universe through spiritual means, who knows, but there was an understanding that the universe is like one breath, breathing in, expansion, breathing out, letting it all go, collapsing into nothingness. How interesting. But even so, the Buddha's telling us something beyond even this grand scale of reality, that in fact samsara is beginningless and endless. There are perhaps many universes, friends. We know there are many in the Buddhist cosmology, 31, so many planes of existence. There's so much more to reality, to the material realm, than we can possibly perceive. I like to take the Buddha's teaching to heart and just simply accept that he's telling us there's no limit, there's no end, there's no beginning and no end to samsara. And so then the tears that have been shed in whatever forms, how many countless lifetimes, incalculable eons, those tears that we've shed at the loss of loved ones would fill the 4 great oceans and beyond. There's one final sutta in this sequence where the Buddha compares the beginningless and endlessness of samsara to the mother's milk that we have drunk. Imagine all the milk that has been drunk in our infant state, as babies, being born again and again and again, and all the milk that has been drunk would fill the 4 great oceans and beyond, still more. So these contemplations give us a sense of perspective and give us a sense of pointing towards letting go, towards developing nibbidā, virāga, vimutti, developing dispassion, developing weariness, developing a sense of disillusionment. We can recognize that, yes, there's gratification to be had in this life, in the sense realm. Sure, we can experience a lot of sense pleasure, delight even. There is gratification to be found here, but there is also danger. The danger being that all the pleasant, enticing, enjoyable, agreeable experiences come to an end. And there is suffering in that. There is suffering in suffering, and there is suffering in pleasure. The suffering in suffering is obvious and apparent to us, and we can feel very disillusioned and world-weary with that. But there's also the suffering of pleasure's end, the impermanent nature of all the pleasant things that can be experienced. They all come to an end, and then we suffer. And this suffering is perhaps hidden at times, but let it be remembered, let it be noticed in our day-to-day lives, that there's no holding to anything permanently agreeable here. There's no opportunity or chance to feel perpetually well and good. No, not at all. There's always suffering in the background. And this is not to be morbid, it's just the way it is. And recognizing that, we can develop this quality of wanting to step above, step out of, step beyond this, to back up a bit and look at the full picture and see how we really don't want to be immersing in samsara, because it's suffering, because it's desire after desire that is always going to be unsatisfied, and therefore a very strong inclination can come up in our hearts to step free, to let go, to see beyond, to basically work to attain freedom from suffering that is Nibbana. So I hope these images, these similes are helpful. Have a look at Saṁyutta Nikāya, chapter 15, the first few suttas. There is a great beauty to similes and a great helpfulness to similes, isn't there? When we can visualize these teachings in different ways, it's very powerful. So let's remember the four great oceans of tears, friends. And when we're grieving and mourning, let's remember this is an old, old feeling. We've experienced this many times. Let's strive to let go of all this suffering. And when we're enjoying and delighting in life, let's just remember that all of this is surely going to change. Let me be awake to this. Let me not be lost in the sense realms when there's pleasure happening. Good feelings are being experienced. Let's not get lost in this, because we can recognize that we'll suffer more if we're not recognizing the impermanent nature of all experience. And again, see how the nibbidā, the weariness, the disillusionment, the virāga, the dispassion, the turning away from, the letting go can happen for us. And then we can free our hearts from the fetters of samsara. Ewan.